5 years, Mount Carmel is host to one of the world's most diverse gatherings. Members of the Baha'i faith from virtually every corner of the planet travel here to attend the International Baha'i Convention. For 5 days, these elected representatives gather to pray, to elect the international governing body of the Baha'i faith, and to consult on the issues of a global community. Despite the many conflicts and challenges that plague our world, Baha'is see a cause for hope, as humanity begins to understand that the only true path to peace is through unity. For Baha'is everywhere, and there are now millions throughout the world, achieving the unity of humankind is a primary goal. The Baha'i community offers a unique model of unity, which embraces and values the diversity of its members. This model can clearly be seen at the International Convention and everywhere in the world that Baha'is gather. Since ancient times, Mount Carmel has been known as Karam El, or Vineyard of the Lord. The slopes blessed by the footsteps of Elijah, one of the prophets of Israel, make a fitting home for this most recent world religion. In the days of the prophets, Carmel was a fertile paradise of vineyards and tall cedars. But over time, the beauty withered, and it became a more desolate place. The story of Carmel's transformation in the modern age, from desolation to crowning beauty once again, is also the remarkable story of the birth of a new faith. The story begins in the middle of the 19th century, a period of worldwide religious expectation. In 1844, in this room in Shiraz, Persia, a young man quietly proclaimed that he was the bearer of a revelation from God. Referring to himself as the Bab, meaning the gate, he explained that he was the forerunner of a divine teacher greater than himself, who would soon appear and bring about a new age of unity and peace. The Bab's spiritual and moral teachings spread rapidly throughout Persian society. Religious and civil authorities viewed the progressive new faith as a threat and killed thousands of the Bab's followers. In 1850, the Bab himself was executed by firing squad in this public square in Tabriz, and his remains were hidden away by his followers. In 1852, one of the most courageous and prominent followers of the Bab, a Persian nobleman named Mirza Hussein Ali, was arrested, tortured, and cast into a notorious dungeon in Tehran known as the Black Pit. In the foul gloom of this dungeon, he experienced the first divine intimation, later writing, "The breezes of the All-Glorious were wafted over me, and taught me the knowledge of all that hath been. This thing is not from me, but from one who is almighty and all-knowing. And he bade me lift up my voice between earth and heaven." When finally released and banished to Baghdad, he began to revive the dispirited followers of the Bab. In 1863, he publicly declared that he was the promised one of whom the Bab had spoken. He took the name Baha'u'llah, meaning glory of God, and his followers became known as Baha'is. Baha'u'llah taught that there is one God who is called by various names in different faiths and languages. He proclaimed the unity of religious truth, a truth which has been unfolded to the people of the world over time by a succession of divine teachers. Baha'u'llah confirmed the oneness of humanity and stressed the need to eliminate prejudice of every kind. Human beings possess an eternal soul and are responsible for their own spiritual development, which can be attained through prayer, an independent search for truth, and service to others. As Baha'u'llah's followers multiplied, Ottoman and Persian authorities sought ways to suppress his influence. The solution? More banishment. They exiled him first to Istanbul, then to Edirne. Finally, they condemned him to perpetual imprisonment in the ancient city of Acre, now called Akka or Akko, the harshest prison colony in the Ottoman Empire. The foul climate and vermin-infested buildings made life in Akka one of the most severe punishments possible. When he arrived in 1868, Baha'u'llah was confined in the prison citadel, along with some 70 followers and family members who had been exiled with him. While imprisoned, Baha'u'llah wrote many of his important works, addressing the kings and rulers of his day and explaining the laws and principles of his religion. For one who had spent most of his life in prison and exile, he revealed a profound global perspective when he wrote, "It is not for him to pride himself who loveth his own country, but rather for him who loveth the whole world. The earth is but one country, and mankind its citizens." Impressed by Baha'u'llah's character, the local authorities eventually relaxed the conditions of his imprisonment, and he moved a short distance north to Bashi, where he spent the last 12 years of his life. During this time, he made several visits to Haifa and established Mount Carmel as the seat of Baha'i administration. In 1891, on this very spot, marked by a distinctive circle of cypress trees, he chose a permanent resting place for the Bab on Mount Carmel. Baha'u'llah passed away the following year. His remains were laid to rest in a small building next to his home in Bashi. Millions of Baha'is throughout the world turn to face the shrine of Baha'u'llah during their prayers each day. To Baha'is, this is the holiest spot on earth. In his will, Baha'u'llah named his eldest son Abdul-Baha as his successor at the head of the faith. Abdul-Baha had accompanied his father during all 40 years of exile and imprisonment. In 1909, Abdul-Baha had the remains of the Bab moved to Mount Carmel and laid to rest in a simple stone building he had built next to the cypress trees. 44 years later, in 1953, a colonnade and golden dome were constructed over the original building. 18 majestic terraces above and below the shrine were completed in 2001 to adorn and beautify this holy place. The Baha'i shrines and gardens on Mount Carmel and in Bashi are the spiritual focal points for Baha'i pilgrims who travel here from every part of the globe to visit and pray at these sacred spots. Between 1911 and 1913, Abdul-Baha traveled tirelessly throughout Europe and North America to spread Baha'u'llah's message of unity and peace. He amplified the teachings of his father and outlined the main features of the administrative institutions of the faith. Once, when asked, "What is a Baha'i?" he replied, "To be a Baha'i simply means to love all the world, to love humanity and try to serve it, to work for universal peace and universal brotherhood." When Abdul-Baha passed away in 1921, more than 10,000 people from the Muslim, Christian, Jewish, and Druze communities gathered in Haifa to mourn their loss. In his will and testament, Abdul-Baha appointed his grandson, Shoghi Effendi, to head the Baha'i faith. For 36 years, Shoghi Effendi initiated plans for the expansion of the Baha'i community, translated Baha'u'llah's works into English, and continued the development of the Baha'i World Center in Akka and on Mount Carmel. Construction of the International Baha'i Archives was completed in 1957, the year Shoghi Effendi passed away. This masterpiece of neoclassical design set the pattern for the remaining buildings. It houses a collection of sacred relics, manuscripts, and items of profound historical significance. By 1963, there were a sufficient number of Baha'i communities throughout the world to elect the international governing body of the Baha'i faith, an institution called the Universal House of Justice, as provided for in Baha'i scripture. Its seat was completed in 1983. From here, the Universal House of Justice guides and supports the activities of the entire Baha'i world community. Two of the World Center buildings were completed in the year 2000. The International Teaching Center building is the headquarters of a global network of advisors to the Baha'i community at local, national, and international levels. The Center for the Study of the Texts is a research center devoted to the study of more than 100,000 documents that comprise Baha'i sacred literature. Since 2018, the Baha'i World Center has also hosted the Baha'i International Development Organization. Its primary purpose is to facilitate the work of Baha'i-inspired social and economic development projects throughout the world. The construction and operation of the Baha'i World Center are funded entirely by the voluntary contributions of Baha'is. Hundreds of Baha'i volunteers from more than 80 countries work with more than 100 local employees to carry out the important functions of the Baha'i World Center. Some of the volunteers are professionals in various fields, and others are young people already learning to place service to humanity at the center of their lives. Some of them work to preserve and beautify the Baha'i holy places, while others help manage the increasing flow of Baha'i pilgrims and public visitors. Still others support a highly decentralized world community dedicated to the advancement of humanity. These volunteers offer their service for limited periods without remuneration. Wherever they reside, Baha'is, along with their friends, engage in efforts to apply Baha'u'llah's principles to the material and spiritual progress of society. Principles including unity. A recognition of the oneness of humankind in all its diversity sweeps away prejudice and becomes a source of creative power. Knowledge. It is central to human progress. Everyone can take an active part in generating, applying, and sharing it. The essential harmony of science and religion, which play complementary roles in the development of knowledge and the advancement of civilization. The equality of women and men. Taking their rightful place in all fields of human endeavor, women play a central role in social transformation. The efficacy of consultation, a process of problem-solving and collective decision-making which promotes both unity and justice. Baha'u'llah exhorted his followers, "Take ye counsel together in all matters, inasmuch as consultation is the lamp of guidance which leadeth the way, and is the bestower of understanding." All over the world, Baha'is are learning to give practical expression to these principles. In villages, neighborhoods, towns, and cities around the world, Baha'is offer community-building activities that are open to everyone. All are learning to contribute to creating spiritually and materially prosperous communities. The Baha'i teachings state that universal peace is both essential and achievable in our time. But the peace envisaged by Baha'u'llah is not merely an end to war and conflict. It also requires the establishment of a just, prosperous, and sustainable global society. Drawing on its experiences from the grassroots to the global level, the Baha'i international community has contributed regularly to the deliberations of the United Nations since its inception in 1945. Baha'u'llah urged his followers, "Be anxiously concerned with the needs of the age ye live in, and center your deliberations on its exigencies and requirements. So Baha'is have addressed critical matters such as religious coexistence, poverty eradication, climate change and the environment, the advancement of women, and the importance of education. Through his life and teachings, Baha'u'llah transcended exile and imprisonment. His vision of unity and optimism for the future inspired the efforts of Baha'is around the world to help build a peaceful and just global civilization. A transformation that is foreshadowed in the buildings and gardens of the Baha'i World Center on Mount Carmel. In the words of the Universal House of Justice, the beauty and magnificence of the gardens and terraces are symbolic of the nature of the transformation which is destined to occur, both within the hearts of the world's peoples and in the physical environment of the planet.